Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Technology is not really, we're not like great friends. So I'm kind of using a new thing, and see, I can't even figure out how to get it open. Okay, so I hope you'll give me a little bit of grace as I figure this out. Okay. There we go. Here it is. Okay, we're there. Good. Okay. I'm excited to see so many teenagers here. Actually, that's kind of my favorite age to share this. I'm going to see if I can put this. There we go. I want to talk today about relationships and how to create healthy relationships and how to recognize signs of unhealthy relationships. And to do this, I call this the relationship bullseye. I'm a very visual person, so it's helpful for me to look at things and have analogies. So I do want to give some credit. The original concept of the bullseye was in a book called The Courage to Trust by Cynthia Wall. And I have adapted and added and changed that over the last 20 years I've been using it. So, okay, I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to introduce each of the levels of this bullseye so that you kind of have some context for what this looks like. And so, all right, can we see this? Oh, let's see. I'm on eraser. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we can see little marks, okay? So this level, this outer level right here, these are our acquaintances. So these are people that we see on a regular basis. We see them often, but we don't know them very well. We might sit next to them in a social function or that type of a setting. This can be even people like our doctor, our hairdresser, people like that we interact with on occasion, but they're not super personal in our lives. We have a lot of people in this category, and the people in this category are valuable. We want people in this category. Even though they're on the outer edge, what would it be like if we walked into a classroom or into a social setting and people didn't just turn and smile at us, right? So we gather information at this level. So some of the information that we can gather is, what is their personality like? Are they warm? Are they friendly? Are they open to meeting new people? Or are they kind of more reserved, keep to themselves, right? That's basic information, but it's important information. So at the next level then, you start to see as we go in, it gets smaller. We have less people in those categories. This level is for coworkers. So these are people that we have a reason to interact with them. So you might be on like a committee with them where you're working towards a goal. You might have a group project, a class project, something like that. So in this, we gather information like, how do they work? What's their work ethic? Are they quick to jump in and offer to do something? Oh, I can help with this. Or are they the very last one to volunteer? We start to gather information like, what's their personality? Are they class clowns? Are they the comic relief? Are they really outgoing and fun? Are they more quiet and reserved? Okay, and then the next level is friends. We have less of this. So now this level gets to be where we're choosing to spend time with them because we want to, because we've learned enough about them that we feel like we have things in common. We enjoy being around them. We enjoy their personality. We also start to see how they treat people in this level. Well, we can see that at any level, really, can't we? But we start to see a little bit more in depth as we get to spend more time when we're just doing it because we choose to. Okay. So this next level then is a confidant level. So this is where we would maybe share more personal things with them and interact with them in more personal ways. Right here, there's kind of this line where anyone kind of outside in these outer levels, we might not share something with them that we would be upset if they shared it with somebody else, right? We're not going to share secrets or personal, like confidential information because we don't know enough of information. We don't know what they're going to do with that information. We're still gathering that kind of information about them. So this fourth level inside here is where we can start to share. We've gathered enough information that we recognize that they're not going to share that information with others, and we can confide in them a little bit more. This inner level, I call this your core people, right? These relationships take a lot of time and energy, and we usually only have room for one or two people in our life at this level. Hopefully in a healthy relationship with a secure attachment, that's your spouse. But I work with a lot of clients who aren't in that position right now, where it's not. Oh, we lost the mic. There we go. So, are we good? Okay. Do you want me to pick up the handheld? I can use the handheld if that works better. Okay. I'll use this until, oh, it's already gone out again. Is it? No, we're good. Okay. Okay. The important thing to understand about the bullseye is my bullseye is mine. It belongs to me. I get to define where people are. Somebody else doesn't get to decide this is where I should be on your bullseye. This is mine, right? I get to decide. But then they also get to decide where I am on their bullseye as well. It goes both ways, right? You guys maybe can recognize when somebody has tried to define this is what I should be for you, right? It doesn't always work well if that's not where you want them to be and where it feels safe for them. The whole purpose of this bullseye and identifying where people should be is because we're gathering information about whether they're safe for us in our lives, whether they're a good fit. Okay, so the natural course of a relationship then is going to look like this, right? We're going to gradually move someone into the center. Okay. And in each of these levels, we should have multiple interactions with somebody. And the reason why is we're spending time to gather information. A lot of people think that the important information that we want to gather is, do we like the same kind of books? Do we like the same kind of movies and music? And those are important and fun things. And that's what we spend our time doing when we're actually gathering the real information, which is what are their values? The way that we know when somebody is a good fit in our lives is when we have the same values. That information is far more important. So example that I want to share is you're with a friend, maybe a boyfriend, girlfriend, you go into a restaurant, you're eating your dinner, the waiter or the server spills something. Okay, this seems like a silly example, but how that person reacts is pretty significant information, isn't it? If they are like pretty chill and like, oh, no problem, I understand. And the server's like, oh, I'll get you some rags, I'll get you some, here, let me help you. That's pretty good information, right? Like they kept their cool, they were polite and respectful, they understood that it was an accident. But what happens if they fly off the handle, they get angry, they start name calling, they start yelling, they start putting down the person. I can't believe you did this, you're such an idiot, right? Have you seen anybody act that way before? I have. And I'm gonna be honest and admit, I haven't usually called anyone names except maybe in my car when I'm driving, but don't judge me. I have been the one to lose my cool too, right? I have been the one to handle a situation in a way that goes against my own values, right? In that case, there's room for humanness, right? There's room for us to be human and make mistakes. But in that case, recognizing it and making a repair is also really important information. If I recognize that, like, oh wow, I really didn't handle that very well, I kind of lost it. And after you have a minute and you kind of like can process in a different way, right? We have a minute to kind of calm our emotions down a little bit, and we're able to look at that from a more objective perspective and recognize that we didn't handle it very well. We can do something to repair. And the repair might be apologizing for one thing. It might be giving a good tip, right? We want to do something, the reparations, we want to do something to make up for that error. Now, if you're with a partner and they lose it, and they yell, and after a few minutes later, and you're like, hey, are you okay? You seem really upset. You're checking in with them. Also, how they respond to that is going to be some information too. If they justify behavior or do some other, like blame that person, if you just feel ugh afterwards, like, oh, I really didn't like how they handled that. The reason that this example is silly but important is because if somebody reacts in that way to somebody else, they're giving us information about their values, aren't they? So their value is, it's okay for me to yell at somebody or call names if they did something that I don't like. The reason that that's important for us is we typically respond in a couple of ways. Our natural reaction might be like, well, I know they've been super stressed out lately. We want to give people the benefit of the doubt, don't we? We want to give them this out. Also, maybe the information that we have, this may be the first time we've seen them behave in that way, and so it doesn't make sense with what we already know. And so we want it to make sense. We want it to fit into a pattern. We want it to make sense. And so we talk ourselves out of the concern that we feel about that by saying things like, well, like I said, they just had a bad day. They don't normally act like this. It's okay. The danger in that is if our gut is saying, oh, I didn't really like that. We're basically talking ourselves out of recognizing our gut feelings, aren't we? And when somebody has a value that it's okay to treat somebody like that when they're angry, what we don't always recognize is that will come back to us. They might treat us that way when they're angry at us, and are we okay with that? Right? So this is why we need lots of interactions. We want to gather a lot of information about a person that we're spending time with. Okay. Did you guys see, I did provide a handout which talks about a lot of the things that I am talking about here. It was on the table out there, so if you didn't get it, you're welcome to pick it up after. Okay, so some of the kinds of information that we're gathering then is going to be, how do they treat their family? What are their values about spending money, about work? Are they honest in work? Are they spending time talking to you while they should be working? That's information about how they're going to interact with you when you're supposed to be working with them as well, isn't it? We get lots of information from those kinds of things. What is their value about service? This is a really, really big one for me. What's their value about religion or church, especially in our culture? People sometimes assume that because you're the same political beliefs or religion or belong to the same organization as me, that your values are going to be the same. And that is absolutely not true. Within any different organization or group, you can have people with a wide spectrum of values. So assuming that they have the same values or beliefs because they belong to the same group or organization can be really dangerous. We need to take that time to actually gather the information, observe, spend time with them, rather than just assuming. Okay, does this person, how do they treat someone when they're angry at them? We kind of talked about that. Do they call names, belittle, manipulate to get what they want? But then also one of the pieces of information that we're looking for is, how do they handle it when we're angry with them? If we express that anger in an appropriate frustration, we come to them and say, hey, I felt really upset when you did this. And we try to be respectful, but it needs to be addressed. How do they handle that? Do they blame you? Do they gaslight? Do they make excuses for their behavior? Or do they say, oh, you're right, I probably didn't handle that very well? It's not that hard to say, I'm so sorry, I didn't handle that well, but we're so afraid of it. We're so afraid of owning that we made a mistake. And so people oftentimes will do a lot of crazy mental gymnastics to get out of being able to say, I'm sorry, I didn't handle this well. And so that's information that's going to be really valuable as we carry on in a friendship, or especially like a dating relationship with that person. Okay. All right. So as we start to move people into the center, one of the important things to notice is when we become closer to people, we have this experience of feeling joy or connection. We feel connected to them, and that feels nice, right? That creates joy in our lives when we create meaningful relationships. Also, when somebody moves out, we experience grief and loss. So an example of this is when I was in college, I had a roommate for 3 years, and we shared the same room even for 2 of those 3 years, and she became my core person. And I still adore her to this day, but I graduated the year before her, and I moved to about an hour away to attend graduate school. And I still saw her and I still talked to her. I know it's hard to imagine, but this was before the days of cell phones and internet. So it was a phone call, right? Or actually going in person to visit that person in order to connect with them. And so it didn't happen nearly as often as it had been happening before. We didn't get to follow each other on social media and see what was going on in their day-to-day lives. And so that relationship changed pretty drastically, but it wasn't because we didn't love each other and weren't still really good friends. It was just the day-to-day, the opportunities to interact changed, the dynamic of the relationship changed. But I made the mistake of keeping her in my center, even though our friendship looked very different by that point. And I realized as she was sharing something with me like a year or two later, that was really a hard thing that she was going through, but she had already actually kind of worked through it and gotten a lot of support from other people by the time she had told me. And that was the first time I kind of recognized, like, oh, I'm not really her core person anymore. You know what I mean? And she actually wasn't mine either, but I hadn't recognized that. And what happened is, so she moved from here to here. She's still my friend. She's still, when I see her, when she passes through town, she comes and stays with me. We pick up right where we left off. But just because of the dynamic of the relationship, I did experience some grief. I was sad to realize that friendship had changed a little bit, right? So, okay, where are we at with time? Okay, one of the mistakes, actually, I'm gonna go over a few mistakes that we make in this process, okay? One of them is doing this. When we don't know anybody, we don't know somebody very well, but we throw them into the center. I've seen this a lot in like dating type relationships, right? We recognize an attraction. And one of the pieces of information we're looking for is chemistry. Do I have chemistry with somebody? My opinion on chemistry is that chemistry is a person thing, not a romantic thing. Because I have had chemistry with young and old, male and female. It's just your ability to connect with them. Are they easy to talk to? Does it come natural? Does it flow easy? I also recognize when I don't have chemistry with somebody, when I try and interact with somebody, and I might know them already, they're already an acquaintance, right, or a coworker, and I try and spend more time talking to them, and I'm thinking, you're so awesome, I really like you, but I got nothing. Like, I can't think of a single thing to say right now. Nothing, right? That's maybe this indication of we don't have a natural, easy chemistry. So we want to have chemistry with people as we move them into our bullseye. But we take chemistry as attraction. Chemistry and attraction are two different things. With somebody that we're dating, we want to have both, but they're separate. So we think if we have chemistry and they're easy to talk to, then it's a sign. I've heard people say that to me. It's a sign we were meant to be together. They're easy to talk to. That's super valuable information, but it's such a tiny piece of the information that there's so much more information that we need to gather before we can decide if that person is our soulmate, right? So I see people throw somebody into the center like this without very much knowledge about the person. And then they maybe kind of exclude everybody else. They kind of tend to focus on that person and push everybody else away. They break plans. They change how they interact. So the danger in this, the risk in this, is if we get information that there's a deal breaker, a red flag or a deal breaker, then what happens is this. They come out to there, right? When we decide that relationship isn't probably a good fit for us, but this line right here is a direct correlation to how much pain we feel when that relationship doesn't work out. Because even if we haven't known them very long, when we put somebody in our center, we have an emotional connection to them. We put a lot emotionally into that relationship, and it becomes very important to us. So whereas if we're going along our way and gradually, can you guys even see those little marks? As we kind of gradually go in, and then we get information at this level that somebody's not a good fit for us, and we end that relationship, we feel pain still, but this is the level of pain instead of that full length. Does that make sense? Okay, so another mistake that we make then is keeping someone in a position for too long, like I did with my roommate. I've worked with clients who have a person help them get through a really difficult time in life, and that really connected them, and they felt so grateful, and they saw this person as being so important to them. But then after life changed, a couple years later, they were in both in different circumstances. They were continuing to try and fit this person into that role, and it didn't work anymore, and their feelings were being hurt because that other person wasn't devoting as much time or attention or effort to that relationship as they wanted. And so they were experiencing grief and loss every time they interacted with that person, rather than moving them to a place where they had more appropriate expectations of where that other person was at too. So part of that is our acceptance of where other people are at and what they're willing to give as well. Another mistake is putting someone in the center who shouldn't be there because of feelings of loneliness. So when we don't have anyone in these two inner layers, we feel lonely. We feel that, right? And sometimes we want to feel that. We want to fill that hole by putting somebody in. And so the mistake we make is by putting somebody who shouldn't be there. So that's maybe this part, right? Throwing somebody into the center too quick, but also it can be like putting children in the center and relying on our children as our confidant when that might not be totally appropriate based on what we're going through, right? So the last mistake is keeping someone in a specific level because of a relationship. So like a sister or a parent sometimes we have to adjust those because even though they're a family now I'm not suggesting that we do this, right? But I am suggesting that maybe we could adjust from our core person to maybe here, or maybe a different level on this bullseye to where when we're interacting with them, we feel safe and we walk away feeling better from those interactions rather than expecting them to be something that they either aren't capable or willing of being to be for us. Okay. All right, I'm almost out of time. I just have a couple things that I wanted to share at the very end. With the bullseye, there's also the physical aspect. So this is especially for a dating relationship, right? When we introduce physical aspects into this level and the very outer level, there's a risk in that, isn't it? Just like throwing somebody into the center. There's a risk in that we don't know enough about them. We don't know if they're going to treat us with respect or how they're going to handle it when we're upset with them. And once we introduce that, it's hard to bring it back out. So my suggestion, and this is the book of Angie, this is my personal perspective, but it makes so much logical sense not to introduce any kind of physical relationship. This is especially for the teenagers in here. Any kind of physical relationship until we are at least friends. We at least know them well enough to know how they treat us. We have some similar values. Because what happens is, when somebody pushes, what are their values about intimacy? Do they have the same values? And when is it okay and what's not okay? That's really important information. And if we have different values about that and they introduce that way at the beginning, we already are gonna feel off kilter a little bit. We're already gonna feel like, oh, this doesn't match up with my values, but now what do? I like this person, I don't wanna end the relationship. And it puts us in a tricky position. So not allowing that or not entering into that physical aspect of a relationship until we have a little bit more information seems like a healthier way to introduce intimacy into that level. So, okay. I think those are the main points that I wanted to share. I'm sure I'll think of things afterwards that I'm like, oh, I wish I had said that. But if you guys have any questions or any concerns, I hope that you guys have thought about the relationships in your life as we talked about this and the people in your own life as we talk about this, and recognize like where people should be. So the homework assignment that I give for my clients is to go home, write out your own bullseye. Sorry that this is such a mess. Write out your own bullseye and thoughtfully, mindfully think about where people belong in this. What information are they giving me? The whole entire purpose of spending time with somebody is to gather information to see if they're a good fit, especially in a dating situation. So why then would we ignore the information that they give us? Don't do it. If they're giving you information about their values and they're not the same as yours, it's okay to end that relationship or change it or place them in a different place on your bullseye. So think about that. Go home and write your own bullseye if you're willing to take that time. Think about those relationships and maybe recognize maybe some changes that need to be made even just in your own mind about where those people belong. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.